and welcome to Church Online. My name is Joy, and I'm glad you're tuning in today. We know there's a lot going on these days. If you find yourself in need in any way, please let us know. We want to help. Whether that's going on a grocery run or offering financial help or offering prayer, please feel free to contact us. We want to help you, and we're going to do our best to do that. Now, for those of you who only attend Heartland via this online service, we're excited to invite you to join the new Heartland Online Sermon Study Group, which meets every Sunday evening from 7 to 8:30. And this small group is a place where you can dig deeper with others into the sermon you've listened to on the weekend, and it gives a chance to meet others who are also attending Heartland Online. To register, head to our website, find Connects Groups, and look for Heartland Online Sermon Study Group. Now, let's worship together.
Galaxies all in motion. as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. When all I see is the cross, God, you see the empty tomb. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh God, the battle belongs to you.
Trying to get back right to the other side. I'm going to show you how great I am. But he said, in me, you have a greater wisdom than all the wisdom of Solomon.
This weekend we're in Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 11, and we're looking at the life of a woman by the name of Sarah. Here's verse 8 to 12. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to a city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful. That's God, who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he was as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. So my first point is Sarah's story. Sarah was Abraham's wife. Austin preached about Abraham on January 1st, just a couple of weeks ago. And as we just read, Abraham was called to move. Genesis 12, 1 and 2, the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you, and I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you and will make your name great, and you will be a blessing." Now, this would have been tough for Sarah. Imagine the conversation. "Hey, honey, guess what? We're moving." "Where?" Sarah asked. "Well, I'm not sure." "Well, when will we arrive?" she asked. "Well, not sure. But it will be great, believe me." Poor Sarah had to leave her home, her people, and all that was familiar and comforting to her. In her senior years of life, she would go to a foreign land. Remember, she wasn't the one who heard God's voice. It was Abraham. That's really important to know, because right off the bat, she had to trust Abraham with this crazy plan or this crazy man. She would be camping and walking for months. But Sarah did have faith in Abraham and the God who called him. And there's one more thing here that was even tougher. Sadly, it's the first thing we read about Sarah. This seems like a curse that hung over her head. Genesis 11:30 sadly says, "Now Sarah was barren. She had no child." Barren. That word alone sounds terrible. To be barren was to have an enormous stigma over you. To be barren was the worst thing in the world for a woman. You were really of little value to your husband in those days when he counted on you to produce an heir. An Israelite woman dreamed of possibly being the one to give birth to the Messiah. Abraham and Sarah had just arrived in their new land God had promised. And then Genesis 12:10 tells us that there was a famine in the land. More travel, more camping, making a home among yet another foreign culture. Now it's the Egyptians. The Bible tells us that Sarah was beautiful, and her name means my princess. Her beauty would become a problem in this foreign land. And what happens to her next is very sad. Says Genesis 12:10, Abraham went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. And as he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife, "I know what a beautiful woman you are. So when the Egyptians tell you or see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you." Then Abraham came to Egypt. The Egyptians saw that Sarah was a very beautiful woman. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants and camels. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarah. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I took her to be my wife? How then? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram and his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. Poor Sarah. Life has been tough on her. If it isn't horrible to have this happen once, your husband, who is supposed to be protecting you, sacrifices you on the altar of convenience. Get this? It happens again in Genesis 20. How confusing that God had to keep stepping in when Abraham lacked the faith and made poor decisions. And at the same time, it must have been building Sarah's faith as God kept stepping in and correcting Abraham's blunders. Amazingly, Sarah hung in there. She could have easily said, I quit. This test is too hard. You know, many leave their faith when things get tough. I can't. I won't trust God. It's just too hard, people say. In Jesus' time, Jesus also asked his disciples when things were getting tough. He said, are you going to leave me too? It's not always easy to follow God and to have faith. Hebrews 11:11, our key verse, focused verse, says, Sarah considered him, that's God, faithful who had made the promise. Was Sarah perfect? Oh no. And you know what? There's way more story here, not enough time to permit us to discuss it. But she had faith. And you know, there were many obstacles in her life. That's my second point. As we've studied Sarah's life, I'm filled with sadness. What a tough life. In spite of facing many tests to her faith, she did develop confidence in God and perseverance. There are people who seem to walk through life without any problems. They have good health, great marriage, long life, kids who do well, and they are secure in their lives. Others' lives are not so easy. My friend Daryl Crocker has had some tough obstacles in life. But you know what? He's kept the faith. In fact, his faith has grown. I want to take you to his life story. Let's watch it together.
Jesus found me at the age of 13. I was baptized at the age of 14. Right after that, I was rushed to the hospital. A day after that, and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Changed my life forever to a life of discipline, insulin, rest, and food diet. And once I settled into that, I realized I had been prophesied over at my baptism that God was going to do something special with my life, and I thought, okay, He saved it. After high school, I went to Bible school, met my wife, we married, graduated, and spent the next 38 years in the ministry as a youth pastor, associate pastor, pastor, lead pastor. And we had our ups and downs, 4 children. But God always showed up. I was never alone. And on January 14th, 2019, I was putting away Christmas decorations when the ladder slipped out and I fell onto the bumper of the truck and into the concrete. Woke up in the brain trauma unit of the U of A hospital with severe bleeding and swelling. It was death-defying, the intensity on my brain. And I had to face the reality of dying if they did bring the swelling down, of making it to my daughter's wedding in 2 weeks, walking her down the aisle, and officiating. Never made it to the wedding. And we had 3 nurses from Vegreville, good friends of ours, that offered to stay with me in the hospital while I watched the wedding online and Nancy could go. And very thankful for that, but I will still gets emotional when I attend weddings or I see a movie of weddings or whatever. That moment when the father and the bride come down the aisle, I missed that moment in my daughter's life. But everything went well. I was released on the following Tuesday. And suddenly my 38 and a half years of being a youth pastor, associate pastor, lead pastor, was done. And my wife, she didn't know how I was going to accept that. She kind of sat quiet, and she says I was quiet for a long time. So in my short-term disability 4 months after. I had a lot of time. In fact, I've had a lot of time to think because I'm now on long-term disability as to, okay, God, what are you doing? I didn't struggle with why, because I've been through all that with my diabetes, but I didn't have any plan. I mean, and for a man, we have to know how to conquer this and get over this. My wife stood by me, very, very strong, and I was never alone with her there. But then she suddenly went in the hospital in October of 2020 with an aortic dissection. She was flown by stars, 7-hour surgery. And I sat in the car in the parking lot, and I looked at my daughter who was with me, and I said, Nadine, I don't know how to pray. I mean, if I think of myself, I want Nancy to be saved. If I think of Nancy, I want her to go to heaven. And I'm really glad it wasn't up to me to make that decision. God so intervened and saved her. I trust Him. I believe in Him. Hebrews 11:6 tells me, without faith, it's impossible to please God. We all have a path that God has for us, and it's never guaranteed it's going to be easy. So the biggest thing I'm learning through my whole life is, Lord, I want more faith. Give me more faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl, for being an example to us, being an example to your church and those who watch your life day in and day out. You are helping to build my faith and others too. Bad things do happen to good people. Now, certainly many people do create their own weather and bring a lot of problems on themselves. To me, the biggest life storm potentially that we make is going into marriage ill-prepared. For example, when we pick someone to marry without consulting God, or you begin a sexual relationship prior to the marriage, you have a setup for a life storm. It begs the question sometimes, why would you pick this person to marry? Couldn't you see those potential issues, those problems, those conflicting issues before you get married? Did any of your family and friends and parents or pastor warn you? Let me get a shot in about our pre-marriage here at Heartland. It's called pre-marriage mentoring. And if you want to get married at Heartland, you need to give yourself 6 months to work with a mentor couple who will come alongside of you and help you to set your marriage up for success. You may say, what's a mentor couple? Well, that is an experienced couple with a good marriage who have been trained and supported in their mentorship ministry. This couple will help model and teach you about communication, about expectations, and all the rigors of marriage so that you can minimize the disruptions. And then this mentor couple is there to help you after the marriage, after you've been married. Pre-marriage people love it. The people who have gone through marriage mentoring, I mean, who doesn't like to talk about yourself and your future marriage? So if you're thinking of getting married in the future, I'm encouraging you to invest in your relationship and your future. Sign up for a marriage mentor. Back to Sarah. Poor Sarah also created some of her own weather by the choices she made. Here's her worst storm in life. Now, to be fair, the promise from God tested her. It rocked her world. It chewed away at her faith. Sarah was 65 when God promised a baby. Can you imagine? And then there was 10 more fruitless years that passed. And now at 75, her clock is still ticking, but it's almost at a standstill. Genesis 16:3 says that they were settled in the land that God promised, but still no baby. Okay, I'm ready, Abraham. I'm ready, God. Let's get the baby thing going. But God wasn't ready. And in their impatience, Sarah and Abraham made a very foolish error in judgment. Genesis 16:2-4 says this, the Lord kept has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram agreed with what Sarah said. Sarah, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. As Sarah considered her circumstances, she concluded that a kind of surrogate parenting was the only possible solution for her predicament. Sarah felt God needed a little help, and so she purposely took the bull by the horns and essentially acted in the role of God in this situation. She found her own solution. This begs the question, do we create our own solutions when we have been told to wait on God? Do we take shortcuts and do life our own way with our own standards instead of living by God's standards? I think that there is something God is often trying to teach us and build into our lives by waiting on Him. Waiting on God, it's going to require faith, patience, perseverance, and looking and listening for God's timing. If we are constantly going for the quick fix, we simply will not mature. Sarah reasoned that since she owned Hagar, the slave, any child fathered by Abraham through a slave would become Sarah's child. But she got more than she bargained for, and the trouble started. When Hagar became pregnant, she says she despised Sarah, her mistress. Lots of conflict and strife that didn't need to happen. Sarah's solution was ill-advised and earthbound. She would regret it for the rest of her lives, rest of her days. As a matter of fact, the consequences of that one act of taking a shortcut on faithfully waiting on God and sharing her husband with another woman had unbelievably far-reaching implications. And you won't believe this, but some of the tensions in the Middle East today are rooted in Sarah's ploy to concoct a man-made solution to her dilemma. The Arab-Israeli conflict is rooted in these two women's offspring. Let's go to point number 3. Sarah's steadfastness. Sarah's life was not perfect. She struggled with patience in light of God's promises. There were poor choices, immoral choices, control issues that weren't well thought through. There were tough circumstances and insecure moments that stretched her faith. She also saw the hand of God and knew His protection in very vulnerable situations. But she also had to put up with the silence of God. But in all of this, Sarah's life looks very human. I'm sure there was loneliness, terror, anger, tears, but she did remain steadfast. She was resilient. She knew God's blessing, and God commended her and said she is a woman of faith. You know, she could have easily been bitter, angry, and miserable and walked away because she didn't get what she thought she deserved in the timeline that she thought it should happen. We learn through life stories like this that God's primary desire in life is to build our faith and test it at times to ensure that it remains strong. God's really not that concerned about our happiness as much as He is concerned about developing our faith. Now back to Sarah's story. Let's go to Genesis chapter 18 and verse 1. It says there, the Lord appeared to Abraham. "Where's your wife, Sarah?" they asked him. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now Sarah was listening in the entrance of the tent, and she laughed to herself as she thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord?" I'll return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. The story of Sarah has a happy ending. Go with me to Genesis chapter 21, and starting with verse 1, it says, "Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. Sarah said, 'God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me.' And she added, 'Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have bore him a son in his old age.'" Even as we conclude this preach, God is not done with Sarah. Pastor Rob will tell us of her remaining 37 years with Abraham and her son Isaac next week. Her son's name is Isaac, which means laughter. What a great ending to a great story. So as we conclude, I want to ask you a couple of questions. How's your faith? What would God like to tell you about your faith? Holy Spirit, would you come and speak to us in this moment? Take a moment to say, "God, would you build my faith?" Let's pray. Oh Lord, we know you're in the business of building strong faith. Holy Spirit, would you nudge us and urge us to go faithfully in your way, your direction? And I pray that we would cooperate with you. God, would you build a strong faith within us? In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Now, at the end of every service, I love to bless you, God's people. And so I want to take you to Hebrews, next chapter, chapter 12, and I want to bless you with these words taken from verse 1 and 2. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off anything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith." May God bless you. Have a good week.
Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us. Once again, if you find yourself in need, please reach out to us. We want to help however we can in this season. I hope you have a great week, and may God bless you.